About a year ago, I made a video called How Alan Wake 2 Evolves Storytelling. Back then, I was still super early in my content creator journey, just figuring things out. But that game hit me hard. The way it talks about writing, creativity, and the whole messy process of making stuff, it connected with me more than I expected. So much so, it ended up shaping what my channel became all about, and it made me ask myself these really uncomfortable questions. Like, if I don't believe I'm a writer, then why am I so inspired by great writing? If I don't believe I'm creative, why am I so deeply moved by narratives that comment on the creative process? Honestly, I thought it'd be a while before another game pushed me to wrestle with something like that again. I figured Death Stranding 2 would probably be the next one to do it. But nope, that honor goes to Expedition 33 isn't just a great game, it's genuinely a masterpiece, and one of the most thoughtful celebrations of video games as an art form I've seen in a long time. The world building is exceptional, the characters are deeply realized, and every layer of the story presents powerful questions with complex answers worth unpacking. So I want to be upfront, this video will contain full spoilers for the entire game. And I know most of us have heard spoiler warnings 1,000 times and usually ignore them. I'm even someone who typically doesn't mind knowing plot details ahead of time. If a story is well told, it still resonates with me. But Expedition 33 is different. If someone had spoiled this game's major twists for me, it would have honestly been heartbreaking. This is one of those rare experiences where going in blind genuinely matters. So if you haven't played it yet, I really recommend you do that first, then come back. It's absolutely worth experiencing firsthand. Before we dive into the deeper stuff I want to talk about, we need a bit of context, especially for those of you who, let's be honest, probably ignored my spoiler warning and haven't played the game. So here's a quick streamlined recap of the setup, starting with the basic premise from the trailer.
Soon she'll wake and paint again. Paint a new number, ticking down every year. One stroke. And everyone of that age vanishes into nothingness. Every year she paints again, and every year an expedition departs for the continent with one hopeless mission: destroy the paintress so she can never paint death again.
Now the story kicks off with Gustave and Maelle in the Paris-inspired island city of Lumiere. And right from the start, we're introduced to one of the game's most important and haunting world-building concepts, the gommage. This term comes from the French word meaning to scrub or erase, and in the game, it's used in a few different ways. It can refer to someone dying through the paintress's magic, or it can be a proper noun, used to describe the paintress's yearly mass culling of the population or the grim festival that surrounds it. Think Day of the Dead, but like a really fucked up version. So it's the day of the gommage, and Gustave is on his way to visit Rose, his childhood friend and former love, as she prepares to say goodbye. The two of them reconnect, share one last moment together, and then she's gone. Yeah, the game does not ease you in gently. Later that night, Gustave is mourning alongside the rest of Expedition 33 as they get ready to set out the next day. This is where the game starts layering in the first big pieces of exposition and world building, mostly through conversations with NPCs. And what really stood out to me here is just how deeply the gommage has shaped not only the culture of Lumiere, but the way these characters live their lives. It's not just lore, it's baked into their entire worldview. By the time the game begins, the gommage has been happening every year for nearly 7 decades. That might not be obvious at first, but once you realize it, it reframes everything. Entire generations have grown up knowing their lives will likely be cut short, and society has reshaped itself around that grim reality. One of the clearest examples of how deeply this has affected people is in the relationship between Gustave and Maelle. She's only 16, and while he's technically her adoptive father, their dynamic feels more like siblings. The story behind that is quietly heartbreaking. Her parents never intended to have a child, but her mother got pregnant just 2 years before their scheduled gommage. That meant Maelle was orphaned young and ended up in foster care. It's a small detail, but one that speaks volumes about how fragile and unfair life is under the shadow of the paintress. This almost unknowable, godlike force that looms over everything. As tragic as Maelle's story is on its own though, the game doesn't stop there. It pushes that grief even further. Later on, there's a quiet but devastating conversation between two party members about what it means to bring a child into a world ruled by the gommage. Every year that you wait to become a parent is a year less that your child will get to live. And every year you do have with them, you're painfully aware of how little time you'll have together. It's a brutal emotional calculus. One character even breaks it down with the math. If she and her husband had a child when they first met, they'd be gone by the time that child turned 12. And that kid, they'd only live to be 21. But then there's the other side of it, the what ifs. What if one of these expeditions actually does succeed? What if the gommage ends before you die? What if your child grows up to be part of the team that stops it for good? That tiny sliver of hope is always there, and it complicates everything. Because what if it doesn't happen? What if you're not giving your child a future, you're just locking them into the same cycle of loss and grief you hope to escape? That's what I mean when I say this game raises powerful questions. Not through exposition dumps or dramatic speeches, but through the world itself, through the way that people live and the impossible choices they have to make. So yeah, just from the core premise alone, Expedition 33 is already asking some incredibly difficult, deeply human questions. And the way it does that, not by telling you how to feel, but by letting the world speak for itself, is what makes it so powerful. Now back to the story, and speaking of the expeditions, they're the other major piece of world building that the game introduces early on. The very first one, called Expedition 0, was formed to investigate the paintress and the strange monolith that appeared with her arrival in year 100. Every year since, a new expedition sets out the morning after the gommage, named for the number painted on the monolith. Now, I'm not exactly sure when it became tradition for expeditioners to be people doomed to die in the following year's gommage, but by the time this story takes place, that expectation is clearly well established. Quick side note, the timing of your birthday in this world is weirdly high stakes. Like if you're 32, born the day after the gommage, and then the paintress paints 33, you're safe for another year. But if your birthday was the day before that, sorry buddy, you're out of luck. Anyway, Gustav and Maelle are both part of Expedition 33, and each of them brings something special to the table. Gustav is the inventor of a new technology called Lumina, which becomes one of your core progression mechanics. It's basically a system that allows people to draw power from the essence of the paintress's monsters known as nevrons. Maelle, on the other hand, is both a skilled fighter and a talented magic user. And yeah, you might be wondering why a 16-year-old is going on what's essentially a suicide mission. The short answer is because she chooses to. She explains that she doesn't want to keep waiting to see the world even if it might kill her, and since she'll be with Gustav, at least they'll have each other. Now, this is one of the few story beats that feels a little shaky. Her motivations are understandable and emotionally grounded, but it's still a bit hard to believe her guardians would just let her go on a mission with such a grim track record. The best defense I can offer is that Gustav and his sister are products of the same culture of loss and fatalism. They get where Maelle is coming from, and maybe that's enough for them to say screw it. But yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, so let's keep moving. As the night comes to an end, we're greeted by a cutscene of the expedition's departure and subsequent landfall, which, to put it lightly, does not go very well.
Which expedition are you from? Fall back!
After watching the expedition get absolutely wrecked, Gustav wakes up alone next to a small pond. And just a small aside, the game never really explains how he gets there. Later in the game, you can actually visit both the landing site of the ships and this spot on the overworld map, and yeah, they are nowhere near each other. From this point until the active end 1, I'm going to start picking up the pace. I'll mainly focus on the core cast, their key objectives, and how the story moves them forward. So, Gustav, alone and clearly traumatized, stumbles through the forest in shock. He eventually reaches a breaking point and decides to end his own life. But before he can, he's found by Lune, another member of the expedition.
You do that, we both die.
Together, they test out Gustav's Lumina tech on a Nevron, and it works. From there, they set off towards the team's rendezvous point at the Indigo Tree. When Gustav and Lune reach the rendezvous point, they find a cryptic unsigned note. It says Maelle has been taken to the strange corals and gives just enough information for them to follow. After a bit of back and forth, the two decide to head out in search of her. What they find is a small hut with a strange door inside, and when they go through it, they're suddenly transported to an elegant, surreal manor. Just down the hall, waiting in one of the rooms, is Maelle. She and Gustav reunite and we're introduced to the Curator, a mysterious otherworldly figure who's been training and watching over Maelle during their time apart. It's also worth noting that after this point, the curator starts showing up at your overworld campsite to help you level up weapons and unlock upgrades, a really clever way of weaving narrative and gameplay together. The group then leaves the manor and finds themselves right back at the little hut in the corals. There, they meet Noko, one of several gestrels you'll encounter throughout the game. Noko tells them that in order to reach the paintress, they'll need to find a way across the sea that separates her from the rest of the world. So the party heads off towards Noko's village to search for a path forward. Once they arrive, the village leader Golgra tells them that someone named Esquier can help them cross, but he's not exactly easy to get to. They'll need a password to reach him, and Golgra's only willing to hand it over if they can defeat her champion. Upon meeting this champion, we're introduced to our fourth party member, Sciel, the last surviving member of Expedition 33. After the group bests her in combat, Sciel joins the party, and Golgra gives them the password needed to reach Esquier.
Come on.
Don't be shy.
Get out of my way!
Jeez, tu pochino va parino.
No, it's just that it's the password.
Rico femicola, gor granda bare bombino, passwordito. Gomiku rapito sava.
Look, I am very sorry. It's just that Golgra told us that's the password, and
Come on, it's a gestrel. He'll have forgotten in about a minute.
I'm sorry.
The gestrels, by the way, are pretty goofy and immature, borderline comic relief at times, but it's worth remembering that tone. What might seem like just a lighthearted, cute contrast ends up being more important than it first appears. Anyway, the team tracks Esquier down in his cave and tries convincing him to help them cross the sea. He agrees, but only if they retrieve a special rock he's lost. And now we're approaching the end of Act 1, which brings us both to the first major spoiler and the first major narrative turning point I want to focus on. So if you've somehow made it this far and haven't played the game yet, this is your last chance to bail. Now there's something I haven't mentioned yet. Maelle has been having visions, or maybe encounters, of the mysterious man from the beach and a strange girl who appears alongside him. I say visions, but they aren't really passive experiences. Both figures speak to her directly. The most important of these happens the night before the group retrieves Esquier's stone. Much of what the old man and the girl say is cryptic on our first playthrough, but one thing is very clear. The man warns Maelle that she doesn't truly understand what she's doing. He urges her to send her friends home and to let them spend what time they have left in peace. Keep that in mind, because it matters. The next day, the party tracks down Esquier's missing rock, guarded by a powerful Nevron. They manage to defeat it, and Esquier calls them over to climb aboard. Gustav and Maelle take a quiet moment together, just the two of them, reminiscing before what comes next. And then, it happens.
More about
Gustav.
I'm just gonna rip the band-aid off now. This isn't a fake out, not in any way, shape, or form. Gustav doesn't come back, he isn't resurrected, revived, or returned to the game in any fashion. He's gone and it's final. By this point in the game, you've likely spent several hours with him, seen him laugh and cry, stumble and succeed. You've watched him share honest personal moments with the rest of the party. And maybe like me, you've even found yourself laughing with him or crying with him. His relationship with Maelle is especially heartfelt. While their dynamic sometimes feels like a big brother little sister bond, Gustav is very much her adoptive father, and he's proud of it. The two share a warmth and mutual respect that adds emotional weight to every scene they're in together. He's a fully realized protagonist with a meaningful arc, and then that arc is abruptly, violently cut short. That alone is bold from a narrative perspective, but where it gets really bold, borderline unheard of, is in terms of gameplay design. It's rare to find a game that delivers both a best-in-class narrative and legitimately fantastic gameplay. That balance is hard to strike, and one of the big reasons for this is that storytelling in games is inherently tricky. You're not just telling a story, you're sharing control of it with the player. That shared control makes it harder to create real surprise, and even harder still to commit to a narrative twist that feels permanent. Because behind the scenes, the cost of building a playable character is massive. Designing them, animating them, balancing their mechanics, it's all a ton of work. So when a game actually kills a playable character, it's kind of like throwing out a completed project. It's just not something developers do lightly. Take Xenoblade Chronicles, for example. That game was considered bold back when it launched for killing off a fully playable character before you even finished the prologue. But if you've played a lot of games, or if you're a developer yourself, you probably saw the writing on the wall. The fact that she was fully playable hinted that she'd be back eventually. And sure enough, spoiler alert, she does return later in the game. And this is where Expedition 33 does something truly brilliant. The writers and developers clearly understood how this medium trains us to expect certain outcomes, not because of the story, but because of the design. And then they weaponize that expectation. They use the player's belief in those behind-the-scenes limitations, the idea that no dev team would waste a playable protagonist, to set up a twist that hits like a truck, one that you don't want to believe even as it's unfolding right in front of you. So Gustav is dead, but the scene isn't over just yet.
To you now. But we both want what's best for our families. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle, but I did try to warn you. It's been a while. Stay out of this. You chose to walk away. You don't get to come back now and interfere.
You've lived more than a lifetime. It's time to let her go.
Back at camp, the mysterious man who saved Maelle introduces himself as Verso and explains that he was part of Expedition Zero. For reasons he doesn't fully understand, he's essentially immortal. He also tells the group that the man who killed Gustav is known as Renoir, the commander of that original expedition. And if they want to stop him, they'll need to complete their original goal and do what no one else has, kill the paintress. Verso offers to help, and with that, he officially joins the party, marking the end of Act 1 and the beginning of Act 2.
What's your name?
Verso.
Alright, that was a lot, so let's take a second to talk about what just happened. I really believe this is the point where most people fall in love with Expedition 33. And for good reason. The end of Act 1 is bold as hell. I was genuinely shocked the developers had the confidence to kill off our protagonist, even if someone else technically steps into that playable role immediately. I remember playing through this part live on stream and saying this might be the moment that pushes this game into Game of the Year territory for a lot of people. And here's the wild part. I can't even express how quaint that twist feels compared to where the story goes next. But setting all of that aside for a second, it's worth pointing out that the reason any of this hits so hard is because the character writing is just phenomenal. Every single member of the main cast is written with such nuance and sincerity that it's almost impossible not to get attached to them. And without that emotional investment, none of these big moments would land the way they do. Now, most of the major plot groundwork has been laid, and the real analysis I want to dive into comes at the end of Act 2, so I'm going to give you a streamlined summary of the key events leading up to that. After Verso joins, the team rides Esquier across the sea. Along the way, Maelle and Verso stop to bury Gustav's arm and give him a final farewell. It's a quiet moment, but a powerful one.
We could never tell if you were my brother or my father. But to me, you were both. The best brother and father I've ever had.
When one falls, we continue.
Thanks for being my family. See you in the next life.
Verso then explains that to reach the paintress, they'll have to get past a massive barrier of chroma. His suggestion, track down and destroy the paintress's heart located in the ruins of Old Lumiere. On the way, they meet Monoco, a powerful gestural and an old friend of Verso's who joins as the final member of the party. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that Lumiere wasn't originally an island. It was ripped from the earth and dropped into the sea during an event known as the Fracturing, and it was immediately following this event that the paintress and her monolith first appeared. Anyway, upon reaching Old Lumiere, Maelle finds a manor that mirrors the one she visited earlier in the game, and we get this scene.
I knew you'd open the door for her.
Really, Verso? This was your plan? How many times must you hurt our family?
No, you don't get to lecture me on family.
Why do you refuse to see I am doing this for us? Yet you insist on rushing toward death. You're trying to stop the wrong cycle.
You're doing this for yourself.
Of course. It's easier for you to think that, isn't it? Easier to betray us if I'm the villain.
So move. I'm gonna fucking kill him.
You haven't told her the truth. Have you, son?
The party then confronts Renoir in battle, but things don't go as planned. He then escapes, along with what appears to be the paintress's heart, and the entire manor vanishes with them. The team is left with no clear way forward.
Fuck!
Back at camp, Verso reveals there's another way to breach the chroma barrier, but it won't be easy. They'll need to defeat two incredibly powerful monsters called axons. If they can do that, the curator can forge a weapon strong enough to pierce the barrier. So that's what they do. After defeating both axons and recovering their chroma, they bring it back to the curator. He then crafts the barrier breaker and offers it to Maelle. Quick side note, chroma is basically this world's version of mana or energy, but also tied to your life essence. So when Maelle touches the weapon, there's a flicker. She sees a vision of Renoir in her mind. It's subtle and she shakes it off, but it's important. We'll come back to it. With the barrier breaker in hand, the party heads to the paintress's monolith. Maelle shatters the wall of chroma that stopped every expedition before them, and just like that, they break through. Inside, they confront Renoir one final time. He's defeated and leaves the party with a final cryptic warning, and finally, after more than 20 hours of journeying, we reach the paintress. It's worth pointing out that the woman we see at the monolith, the giant who paints the numbers, isn't really the paintress herself. She's more like a magical construct or puppet. The real paintress is the heart figure from the manor. After a brutal final battle, the paintress is defeated and the party returns home, seemingly victorious. But before we get to the final scene I want to talk about, we need to go over a few last pieces of context. Throughout the game, Renoir and the burned girl who follows him have been dropping vague, ominous warnings about the mission. We also learned that Renoir isn't just some villain. He was once close with Verso. In fact, Renoir is Verso's father, and the burned girl is his younger sister Alicia. So by the time we reach the paintress, it's not exactly shocking to learn that she's Verso's mother. Likewise, by now, both Maelle and the player have started to notice something strange. There's a connection between her and Alicia. something unspoken, maybe even metaphysical. And the night before the final confrontation, Alicia visits Verso and gives him a letter. With all of that in place, we can now get to the final scene I want to talk about.
Brother, I tire of the conflicts and deceptions that plague our family and theirs. So, I entrust you with this letter. Whether you give it to her is up to you. I'm at peace with what's to come. When the time comes, I hope you will be too. Maelle, it's a strange feeling watching you with my brother, laughing and smiling, without the scars or the memories that afflict me. Alicia, as she was meant to be, not this painted version that I am. My family, a facsimile of yours, and this world, a mirror, painted by your mother, the paintress, to stave off her grief. Seeing your expedition through would plunge us all into the abyss. For in ridding the world of the paintress, you'd lose the sole force standing against the one who would erase us, the one who invokes the flowers of the gommage. An act of love, for he does love her. Your father. On her monolith, she paints a warning for us all, of the few she can save as her power wanes. We all wish for our families to thrive. Your family, however, believes only one can survive. But perhaps you'll find another way. You who have lived amongst us, perhaps you differ from your father and your sister, as I differ from mine. Your mother paints life, whilst your father, death. What will you paint?
So that's it then. Everyone's dead. The paintress was never the one responsible for the gommage. The number she painted each year wasn't a death sentence, it was a limit. A reflection of how many people she still had the strength to protect. And as huge a twist as that is, it's just one piece of a much larger, far more surreal puzzle. Because spoiler, I lied. This isn't the final scene I want to talk about, not even close. To understand what's really going on, we need to make it through the epilogue and into Act 3. This is where everything either clicks into place or gets deeply confusing. So I'm going to break it down slowly and walk you through what it all actually means. The epilogue is titled Epilogue Alicia and takes place in the past. We wake up playing as Verso's sister, Alicia, but now her hair is the same color as Maelle's. A voice calls out to her, and when she steps out of the room, we realize she's inside the same manor we visited earlier in the game, the strange dreamlike one with the curator. She makes her way into a large chamber where an older couple stands in front of a swirling, otherworldly canvas. The paint inside it seems alive, shifting and moving. We're introduced to Alicia's sister, Clea, and then comes the biggest info dump of the entire game, so let's break it down piece by piece. First, there's an entire hidden layer to this world we haven't seen. In it, there are at least 2 magical guilds, the writers and the painters. Alicia's family belonged to the latter, and here, painting isn't just a creative outlet, it's actual magic. Painters don't just paint pictures, they create worlds. Living, breathing, fully realized worlds that exist inside the canvas. Think the paintings in Mario 64 mixed with the dreams from Inception. These aren't illusions, they're entire realms with people, histories, and ecosystems. And as the game makes clear, they feel as real as anything outside the canvas. So then here's the big reveal. The world we've been playing in for the last 20 plus hours, it's not the real world. It's a world inside a magical painting. The place Alicia wakes up in during the epilogue, the manor, the family, the canvas, that's base reality. And the painting her parents are staring into, that's where the entirety of Expedition 33 has taken place up until now. Now this twist, as well as the ending that we'll get to shortly, are apparently somewhat controversial, which I honestly find quite shocking, but at the same time, I do understand how this kind of plot twist can alienate some people. After all, it's taking an already interesting fantasy world and premise and then wrapping it in a thick layer of meta-commentary that's unapologetically about art and artists. And as I mentioned at the start of this video, I absolutely love this kind of storytelling, despite struggling with the implications of exactly that. But we're still not done with the story. Just like in the canvas world, Alicia's parents in reality are Renoir and Aline, the woman we've come to know as the paintress, and Verso is her real brother. Except, in the real world, Verso is dead. He died saving Alicia from the fire that burned her, and it's implied his death was the result of a trap laid by their rivals, the writers. So let's rewind. The canvas where the game takes place, it used to belong to Verso when he was a child, a space he created. Because of that, a piece of him still lives there and is still painting things in that world. Which also explains the tone of the world. The gesturals, esquisse, the colorful, whimsical touches, they aren't random. They're the imaginative creations of a child who wanted to dream a world into existence. After Verso's death, Aline was consumed by grief, so she used her painting magic, chroma, to enter his canvas. She went there to escape, to mourn, and to be with the version of her son that still existed inside. However, time moves differently inside paintings. Aline spent 67 years there, but only a few hours or maybe days passed in the real world. But there's a cost. Staying in a painting drains your chroma, your life essence. The longer you stay, the weaker you become. Stay too long, and it kills you. Renoir, afraid she would never come back, followed her in, and he was right to do so, seeing as she created an entire fake family. The versions of Verso, Renoir, and Alicia that we know throughout the game, just more of Aline's creations along with everyone else in that world. Fabricated echoes. Back in the real world, Alicia's sister tells her it's time to bring their mother home. So Alicia hides the canvas knowing Aline would try to return to it and then enters it herself. But her mother's chroma is overwhelming. As Alicia steps inside, she loses herself, literally. Instead of entering the painting as Alicia, she's reborn within it, as Maelle. Yup, yet another twist. Maelle is Alicia. She's lived an entire life in the painting, never knowing who she really was. When she was gommaged at the end of Act 2, she didn't die. Her mother's chroma was stripped away, and with it, her old identity came back. From here on, I'll keep calling her Maelle just to avoid confusion. With her powers and memories as a paintress restored, Maelle speaks with Verso. Then she's confronted by her father, revealed to have been the curator all along.
Papa.
Their exchange is heart-wrenching. Maelle now understands everything, but she doesn't want to leave.
Once we erase the canvas, we won't have to worry anymore.
She's home now. Why?
You know your mother. Verso painted this canvas. It contains a piece of his soul. She'll never willingly part with it.
No.
For the sake of the living, we must part with the dead.
No, Papa. See, I hid the canvas.
She will always find it. This is our only opportunity, while she's too sick from her prolonged descent into the canvas to return.
No. Papa. Papa, please. This is Verso's only canvas. You can't destroy the last piece of him that we have. This is my home now. You can't just decide—
Your home? After all that with your mother, you want to stay?
You know how little remains of my life outside.
Alicia, you'll die. You've already been here longer than you should.
But...
No. Look at me, I said no. I am not letting my daughter risk her life. Alicia.
I'm not, Mum. I'm not going to lose myself if I stay.
I know full well you will, and I am not doing this again!
This world, despite everything, is where she grew up. It's where Gustave lived and died. Renoir already knows Aline will stop at nothing to return, and is now worried his daughter won't willingly leave either. So he prepares to destroy the canvas for good. But Maelle refuses to let him. They fight, she escapes with Verso. After making camp, Maelle uses her restored powers to bring back Lune and Ciel. She tells them that if they can defeat her father, the gommage will finally end, and with enough chroma, she'll be able to bring back everyone they've lost. And at this point, we need to take a step back. These reveals come at you almost as fast in the game as they have in this video, and honestly, it wasn't until this point in my playthrough that I actually stopped to process everything. When I realized the world of Expedition 33 existed inside a canvas, I fully expected the game to end right there, with that huge twist serving as setup for a sequel. But instead, it throws you right back into the canvas as Maelle, and Act 3 begins. And I was immediately hit with a bunch of questions. Now that we've seen the real world, a world with its own lore, conflicts, and mysterious rules, why are we going back to the canvas? Why return to a place that from this new perspective suddenly feels small and insignificant? And the more I sat with that thought, the more I realized that feeling is the point. The game puts the player in the exact same headspace as Renoir. Once we understand the canvas isn't the real world, we start to treat it like it's disposable, something to move past. But we've also lived in that world, we've built relationships there, we've suffered loss there. So when Maelle pushes back, when she says this world matters, we get it. Because to her, and to us, it's not just a dream world. It's where Gustave lived, it's where friendships were built, where good people died. These characters may be fabrications in some magical sense, but our connection to them is very real. And in creating that tension between Renoir's detachment and Maelle's emotional bond, the game brings one of its major themes into focus, the idea of artists as gods. Sure, the world of Expedition 33 is filled with dramatic stakes and magical rules, but underneath all of that, it's asking very human, very grounded questions about what it means to create a world and what responsibility comes with that power. If an author writes a novel filled with characters and histories and cultures, and the only copy of that book burns, hasn't that world on some level died? Or think about online-only games. When a server shuts down, entire digital worlds vanish. People lose spaces they lived in, even if they weren't real. It's that intersection between creation, memory, and loss that this game leans into. And while it'd be easy to call that pretentious, I think the way the game handles it proves otherwise. Because this isn't a story that starts with abstract artsy ideas, it earns them. It spends 20+ hours building characters you care about, giving you something grounded and emotional to hold on to. Only then does it pull back the curtain and ask the bigger, messier questions about authorship, godhood, and what it means to let go. And those questions keep hitting even in the game's final hours.
We painted hundreds of canvas worlds, pushing the very boundaries of creation. And she never let me forget that every day we spent here has a price. Yet, here we are now.
So trust her. If she's doing this, then...
I trust what she taught me. This is not a game. You think you know what's at stake, but you don't.
I know precisely what's at stake. You want control. You want to feel like you're doing something. You couldn't save Verso, so you want to save us. Except you're not. Destroying the canvas won't help us move on. It'll just deny us the one place that helped us feel again.
67 years. 67 years I spent trapped within the monolith. But I persisted. Do you know why? Do you know why I cannot leave her or you behind? This is what I see every day. I cannot spend another day with living corpses. Since the fire, our family has crumbled. Aline in the canvas. Clea fighting a solitary war. You, a living ghost. Verso's death broke us. Wanted to be fixed. I need it to be fixed. I cannot lose you too.
Don't you see? That's how I feel about them. I can't lose them either. I've lost too much. Papa, see? I've lost so much.
We both lost so much.
Papa.
After Maelle and the others defeat the real Renoir, she tells him she just wants a little more time. She promises she won't stay forever. He believes her and leaves the canvas, but Verso knows her too well. He confronts her and Maelle admits she lied. She has no intention of going back. In the real world, she's maimed, scarred by the fire that took her brother. In the canvas, she's whole. Verso, still just a fragment of the real person, wants his family to heal. He wants Maelle to choose life, even if it's painful, and he knows that if she won't leave on her own, he may have to force her to. That's when the game gives you the final choice. Play as Maelle or as Verso. And your decision here determines the fate of the canvas. Now, I can't tell you how both endings play out. In fact, I haven't even tried to find out, because I chose Verso, and I'm so confident in that choice, I don't need to see the alternative. That's how powerful the storytelling is. When the moment came, I knew exactly where I stood. And it was incredibly bittersweet, watching Sciel, Lune, Monoco, Sciel, and Verso die for the final time. It broke my heart, but it also felt right. Because as Verso says to Maelle earlier on, the world of the canvas and everyone in it bears the weight of her family's cycle of grief. And as much as I wanted that world to keep on existing, like Verso, I wanted even more to see this family finally start healing. It's this incredible blend of deeply emotional character writing, brilliantly composed world building, and deeper meta-narrative questions that, much like Alan Wake 2, makes Clair Obscur Expedition 33 not only a peak video game story, but a story that can only be told in a video game. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and ding the little bell if you want to be notified when my next video goes live. That's all for now, folks. Thanks again, and see you next time.